Needlepoint and More. Written and narrated by Spicy Chestnut. He's debating between linen and velvet for the shadows of his latest piece, 10 other braids of floss strung over his arm, when the door chimes and Zelda Harkinian walks uncertainly into the store. He almost can't believe it, does a double take to make sure he's seeing straight. He's never seen her outside of the engineering lab. Not at the coffee shop across from campus, nor at the study lounge so many students frequent. But she nonetheless floats like a vision into the narrow aisles of the Needlepoint store, a woman on a mission. Heat rises to his cheeks and his breath catches in his throat, and he ducks down beneath the shelves like a young boy caught browsing the adult section of a bookstore. The feeling is similar too. After all, what would she, brilliant engineering major, leader of the student council and girl of his dreams, think of him engaging so wholeheartedly in a hobby as fey as needlepoint? His roommates gave him a hard enough time with it as it was, and the only other person he knows who does it is his grandmother. In fact, he was currently buying floss for a project they had planned to do together over the summer. His heart is racing as he kneels, pretending to examine a row of glittery lame. He is debating how best to extricate himself from this unfortunate collision of worlds with the greatest amount of grace and subtlety when, quite suddenly, she rounds the corner of his Heidi aisle and comes to a stop in surprise. He stares up at her like a deer in headlights. "Oh, sorry, excuse me," she begins, as she makes to squeeze past him, then stops, staring down at him with dawning recognition. "Wait, you share my engineering lab hours, don't you? At Hyrule Tech? What's your name again? Long?" He forces himself to rise on slightly wobbly legs, cursing his luck. He's never spoken to her before, never interacted on a basic level. No, "May I borrow your eraser?" or "Can you pass those goggles?" Never taken the chance to impress her with his intelligence or charm or wit. So of course, she would run into him like this, dressed in an old, stained, and oversized Castletown High hoodie, wearing pink socks with blue sandals. Well, he might as well go all in, he supposes, just preemptively ruin any chance at romance with the sheer overwhelming stench of dork currently hanging about him like a fart. It's not like he can really hide it anyway. Yeah, he offers anxiously, wiggling his toes in the slip-ons. 3 o'clock, Professor Mabarty. Link, he corrects, extending his free hand. Nice to, formally meet you, I suppose. She gives him a chagrined smile, taking his hand and shaking firmly. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Link, not Long. Nice to finally meet you." She releases his hand, and he uses it to run his fingers awkwardly through his hair. "Do you needlepoint?" she asks in surprise, eyes fixed on the bundle in his right arm. He takes a deep breath, says goodbye to any fantasies of asking her on a date, and dives headfirst into the dork. Yeah, since I was a kid. I do it with my grandma." To his surprise, instead of hiding a cringe or, at best, being politely disinterested, her eyes light up. "Really? Are you any good?" He blinks, takes a moment to process. This was not how he expected this to go. "I suppose so. I've lost count of the number of pieces I've done." "Really? Do you have any pictures?" The urge to pinch himself to make sure he isn't dreaming is strong, but on the off chance this is real, he doesn't want to come across any weirder than he already surely does. "I think I've got a few on my slate," he answers, slipping a hand inside his pocket and pulling out the device. He flips quickly through the apps, opening up his projects album and pulling up a photo of his latest. He takes a breath for courage before turning the screen around for her to see. He delights probably a bit too much at her reaction. She grabs the phone out of his hand and holds it close to her face, eagerly pinching the screen as she zooms in on details. "You made this?" she gasps, glancing up to him with an expression akin to awe. His stomach does a funny little flip. Yeah, finished it last fall. I've been waiting for summer to start a new one." He gestures to the bundle in his arm. A bit too much to juggle school, work, and a tedious craft project all at once. Her fingers trace the edges of his phone and she bites her lip. Before he can work through his disbelief to come up with a polite way to ask what's on her mind, she tells him. Do you think... would you be willing to teach me? She looks at him with wide eyes, and much like him when he was a boy of 10 coming to his grandma on the heels of the village craft fair to ask the same thing, there is a glimmer of awkward vulnerability there. You want to learn how to needlepoint? He asks, unable to keep the incredulity from his voice. Why? It's a dumb question, considering he is a big fan of the craft and has been honing his skills for a decade. But the ridicule of his roommates has perhaps burrowed a little too deep in his mind, and the pressure of college social life too omnipresent. She fidgets and hands his phone back, only to twist her fingers together in its absence. She looks down, takes a shuddering breath, and when she looks up again, he's alarmed to find tears shining in her eyes. My mother died this past year. Cancer. She'd been battling it for ages. Her voice is a bit hoarse, so she clears her throat before continuing. When she was in better health, she would do needlepoint, designs she created all by herself. Beautiful pieces of the public gardens or Laurelin Bay. One time she even did one of my father and I, she adds with a watery laugh. Now that she's gone, I thought maybe father and I could learn how to do it together, to be close to her, but he insists needlepoint is for old ladies and housewives and buries himself in his work to avoid thinking about her absence, and I'm left all alone to deal with her death. Here the tears finally overflow her eyes, and the earlier alarm he'd felt rises into something of a panic. Oh, no, please don't cry, he frets, frantically searching his pockets for the little packet of tissues he keeps for allergy season. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring up something so raw. He awkwardly extends the crumpled plastic packet, and she gives him a grateful, tear-stained smile, pulling out a tissue. She dabs at her eyes and blows her nose, waving him off all the while. No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to put you in this position. I'm just... She crumples the tissue in her palm and stares at her hand ruefully before giving him a sad smile. I'm just having a hard time right now. Awkward silence falls between them, and in it, he mulls over an idea. He's told his grandmother about her in their weekly emails, and she's always been supportive, adaptable. Heck, more often than not, it was Link keeping up with her, not the other way around. Surely she wouldn't mind. I feel free to say no, of course, he prefaces, hands twisting nervously in his hoodie pocket. But I'm a bit busy with classes and work through the end of the school year, and I wouldn't have time to do my own needlepoint even if I'd wanted, let alone lessons. But every summer, my grandmother and I get together and complete a project over the break. You'd be welcome to join us if you'd like. She taught me everything I know, so between the two of us, I'm sure we could help you learn the basics in no time. Zelda blinks. Then all at once, a hopeful expression lights up her face. Her smile is like the sun when she turns it on him, and he feels bathed in the warmth of it. His heart swells. Really? You'd really do that? He shifts his weight from one leg to the other, trying to play it cool, trying not to get too hopeful. Sure, I'm always happy to share in the art, especially if it means that much to you. He is utterly taken aback and delighted in equal measure when she throws her arms around him and gives him a tight hug. Thank you so much, she murmurs against his hair, the simple words seeped in emotion. He fumbles, struggling to pull his hands from his sweater pocket to wrap his arms around her shoulders. But once he does, he returns the sentiment with equal warmth. When he finally leaves the needlepoint store half an hour later, shopping bag hanging from his arm, with Zelda's help, he decided on velvet for the shadows. He feels light as a feather. A slip of paper with her phone number and email, written in her charming, curly handwriting, is clutched between his fingers. When he gets to his car, he pulls out his phone and texts his grandmother. Would it be all right if I brought a friend with me to learn needlepoint this summer? A few minutes later, she responds. Sure, I don't see why not. Who is it? Have I met them? He bites his lip, hesitates, then types her name. It's Zelda Harkinian from my engineering lab. Seconds later, he gets a response in all caps. I told you needlepoint was cool.